and welcome to MPL Weekly. I'm Becca Scott here with Luis, Scott, Vargas, and Marshall Sutcliffe.
Hey.
We all chose to wear shades of light pink. We planned that. No big deal. We texted about it.
I would say it worked out a little better than previous broadcasts with the fashion sense of some of the commentators.
Ooh, sick burn.
That was a beat on Ben Stark, to be
Or
clear.
lack thereof.
Ouch. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks.
Yeah. So how are we feeling about today? This is week 4 of our Ruby division in this core split. And this is the last before Mythic Championship 5. Why is everybody not playing Kethis this week?
I think there's a bit of an overcorrection. We just saw Alias's great deck tech about Ray Sato's red-green deck, which is like laser focused on beating Kethis. Unfortunately for him, no Kethis to be found.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what MPL Weekly is and what we're doing here today. There are 4 divisions of 8 players. As we mentioned, today is the 4th division for this split. Now, each week we're going to feature one of those divisions. Players play other players within their division, and the winner of each match gets 2 Mythic points. Now, that's in the first 7 matches that happened this week. That was the round robin tournament. Then these players are going to play in a tournament style bracket. We have standings of how their round robin play went. Here we go. Ben Stark, Andrea Mengucci, REID Duke, and Ray Sato are the 4 players who are in the top 4, and we're going to be watching their tournament-style games play out in this bracket. And what do you see when you look at these standings? What sticks out to you? Luis?
Well, Ben really ran away with ran away from the rest of the field here, going 6-1 with his mono red deck. And then Andrea, close behind at 5-2, playing Esper.
Kind of interesting there, by the way. Like 2 opposite ends of the spectrum are the ones that did the best. It wasn't a clear way to go here.
And I find it funny that Ben chose to then switch up his strategy drastically, whereas Andrea played almost card for card just the same deck.
Which I think Ben might have been anticipating
Yes.
with his choice.
Now, we should mention there was some of that Kethis combo deck in the round robin play, but none of it in this bracket as they've metagame past that. So here is where we are with our top 4 bracket. Upper finals are Ben Stark, changed from mono red to mono blue tempo, and Andrea Mengucci still in the Esper control. And in the lower semifinals, we have Ray Sato on the Gruul mid-range, which we saw Alias go over the ins and outs of that, and REID Duke on Orzhov Vampires, which I believe he did play Kethis combo during the week.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Predictions, what are we seeing here?
Well, I think that the first match we're going to be taking a look at is Ben Stark versus Andrea Mengucci, and Ben has a pretty clear advantage in the matchup.
Ooh, why mono blue isn't something that I've seen played much lately.
Yeah, given where we're at now in Standard, it's actually a bit of a throwback deck, though it had its time, in fact, winning Mythic Championship, and it is still. It still has the same pieces. In fact, maybe even a few upgrades since the last time it was successful. But it just seems to have fallen out of favor. Feels more like a metagame choice, meaning Ben sat down and thought, maybe Mengucci's just going to run it back with this deck. This is a great matchup, and then I can have a decent enough matchup against what I hope the other players to play.
And was it a bit of bucking expectation because people thought he might run back the mono red?
Ben has played some variant of mono red at almost every single MPL split to date.
He used to be known as a limited player. Now he's just the mono red guy.
So I think that Andrea may have thought, Ben's probably just going to run back mono red. Time to bring Esper with a bunch of life gain.
Yeah, well, a little bit more about this matchup. We have Ben Stark and Andrea Mengucci. Ben Stark playing since '94.
Oh, he's old school, baby, all the way back.
Yeah. 7 top finishes, and Andrea Mengucci notably won the Mythic Invitational last year in Boston, and on Esper control, as he was then, even though that was the interesting duo standard format. So let's see. Predictions on. So we think the mono blue is
This
definitely.
is a horrible matchup for a Mengucci. Basically, the idea for Ben is that he can use extremely cheap evasive threats and put a card like Curious Obsession on him to gain an advantage, and he has multiple ways to protect those threats from the removal spells that Mengucci is going to be trying to build to. The attrition battle that Mengucci wants to play here isn't going to work against mono blue. So this could be ugly. I mean, this is like, if I'm Mengucci, I am really, really sad when I see Island hit the other side of the battlefield multiple times during the course of this match.
Yeah, and as we saw, whoever wins in the uppers gets to go straight to grand finals, and they're going to get a bye into day 2 of Mythic Championship 5 in October, coming up pretty soon. 3 players in the MPL have already secured some of those spots in day 2, and the final one is going to go to one of these players today. it does seem like there's a big advantage to being one of the 2 top seats.
There is.
So,
Mathematically, it's just a huge advantage, especially if you win that first match. You're in the finals already, and you have to be beaten twice once you're there. And so, right now, Ben is looking to be in the best position in the tournament. He has a good matchup in his opening round, and if he wins it and can capitalize on that, he'll be sitting there waiting and with a match in the books. Mathematically speaking, he's in great shape.
well, let's see a little bit more about Ben Stark's round-robin play this week.
Hi friends, Megan here to guide you through Ben Stark's journey to the top of the Ruby division. Stark has played mono red or Rakdos aggro for every single MPL match so far, and he's stuck with that formula for this week as well. Stark said of his choices, "As constructed, my deck is very bad against creatures and very good against combo and control. I addressed it by having 0 of my 7 opponents choose creature decks." Stark began with an inauspicious loss against Mike SIGRIST, who piloted Esper Control. After winning a Game 1 that saw SIGRIST stuck on 2 lands, Stark lost the next 2 games to SIGRIST's Dynamite Planeswalkers. But why linger on the bad when there's so much winning ahead of us? He next faced off against fan favorite REID Duke playing fan unfavorite Kethis combo. Duke made the critical misplay of having lands that come into play tapped, and Stark took Game 1 in less time than it takes to microwave a bag of popcorn. Stark's deck looked anemic at the beginning of Game 2, losing creatures and ground to Oath of Kaya, but by the middle of the game it proved that Stark had come prepared for Kethis. Chandra, Acolyte of Flame created attackers and kept Dukes to fairies in check, while Fry took care of Kethis himself, clearing Stark's path to victory. We're going to breeze through this next match to prevent us all from getting deja vu. It was against William Huey Jensen, also on Kethis combo, and it went down exactly like that last match against REID Duke. Then, Stark played Rei Sato on Grixis Control. Sato tried to harness the power of Nicol Bolas, but in Game 1 there just wasn't time, as Stark won in a brisk 2 minutes and change. Games 2 and 3 were a race to see who could pull ahead after both players spent the early and mid-game decimating their opponent's threats. Sato took Game 2 when he resolved a Narset. He stabilized at just 3 life, but with a negate in hand and 2 planeswalkers on the board, his win was safe. In Game 3, however, Sato couldn't match the card advantage engine that is Experimental Frenzy, and Stark's endless stream of spells locked up the deciding game. Stark got his revenge against Esper Control in his next match versus Andrea Mengucci. Despite some early interaction to keep Stark's attackers in check, Mengucci just couldn't match the power of Experimental Frenzy. Turn away, fans of Teferi, for this brutal Game 2 that saw the Planeswalker die again and again and again before Stark finally won the match. Jean-Emmanuel Deprat brought Is It Phoenix, a favorite choice for him in MPL play. Stark's early board presence in Game 1 almost hit a stumbling block when Deprat returned 3 Arclight Phoenixes in a single turn. It was too little, too late though, and Stark still got the game. Game 2 was a good old-fashioned race as Stark and Deprat attacked and pointed burn spells at one another's faces, with Stark coming out ahead by just a hair. Last up was Lucas Esper BERTHOUD playing Bant Scapeshift. BERTHOUD was lamenting his recent deck choices to the Twitterverse just last week, and it was, unfortunately for him, prophetic. With basically 0 ways to interact with Stark's creatures, BERTHOUD was a sitting duck in Game 1. In Game 2, he stabilized with a Hydroid Crassus and, eventually, a horde of zombies. But Stark fended off the undead just long enough to burn out his opponent. With that final win, Ben Stark became the only MPL competitor in the core split to lock up top 4 with a stellar 6-1 record.
I thought, based on last week's results of Kethis dominating so much, that people would play Kethis and people would play control decks tuned to beat Kethis. But you can't really play mid-range because Kethis just destroys mid-range. So mono red, especially a really aggressive version of it, like the one that I played in round robin, has a good Kethis matchup, a good control matchup, and is really bad against mid-range. So I figured virtually nobody would choose any mid-range creature decks. And I did get it right. There was no Gruul Spellbreaker, Gruul decks. There was no Jade Light Ranger green decks. It was like all Kethis and Esper and Grixis. So I just had basically all good matchups, and I chose the deck just for this metagame. Well, I figured Andrea would likely submit Esper again. I thought that was the most likely case. I'd play him in round 1. Mono blue is the deck that has the best Esper matchup, in my opinion. Also, I figured it's not like he would just assume I was definitely going to submit mono red again, but that there's a higher chance I'd play mono red than anything else. So if he tailored his deck to be a little better against mono red, then at least those cards wouldn't be quite as effective against mono blue, because even though the decks do similar things, the type of stuff you want against mono blue and mono red is not the same. Well, I feel good. I mean, in one match of Magic, I mean, nobody's ever a big favorite in Standard. Like, anybody could win, anybody could lose at any time. But like I said, I chose mono blue because I thought he would choose Esper, and I think I have a good matchup.
All right, there you have it from Ben.
Nailed it.
Knowing the metagame, very important to going 6-1.
Yeah, and he said, you know, look, I put him on this. I chose my deck accordingly, and he was right.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we'll see how that works out, and maybe other players will try and be a little less predictable next time.
Yeah. Hey, but also if you're winning with the deck, it's real hard to let go.
That's
you know,
true.
Not for Ben though. Not one for sentimentality when it comes
a lot
to
of emotional attachments there.
Yeah.
Speaking of winning with the deck that works for you, Andrea Mengucci on Esper Control. Let's see what he did over the course of the week.
The metagame always swings. After 5 of the 8 players last week showed up with Kethis combo, and Li Shitian won the top 4 playoff with the deck, you could be sure that this week's competitors would be ready. But of course, everyone knew that. So what was the right choice this week for battle in the Ruby division? Andrea Mengucci was ready for all of them. With Kethis combo in mind, the Italian pro came ready with his own Esper control, leveraging the power of removal, hand disruption, and planeswalkers to take on the open field. It all began against Lucas Esper Berthoud's Bant Scapeshift deck. This is where the removal came in handy. Field of the Dead can make an undead horde of zombies, but it's nothing that Legion's End and Kaya's Wrath can't solve. Mengucci controlled the first game from the start, and fought off not 1, but 2 Scapeshifts, finding a timely Kaya's Wrath from Escanta the Sunken Ruin to take his opening game of the week. The second one looked to be going the same way, but the sideboard tech of Veil of Summer saved Berthoud from a key Legion's End and sent things into a decider. But he wasn't the only one able to mess with an opponent's game plan. Mengucci had Unmoored Ego in the final game to remove all of the Field of Dead from Berthoud's deck and won the game from there. With his primary win condition gone, Berthoud couldn't get much of anything going, and Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, eventually closed things out. The dreaded Kethis combo deck was up next, piloted by REID Duke. REID demonstrated the deck's raw power by comboing off early in the first game as Mengucci struggled on mana, and he was well on his way to taking the match when Yawgmoth's Vile Offering removed a Teferi from Mengucci and left Duke with a Jace. But that just set off a wild back and forth. Mengucci responded with a haymaker of his own in Command the Dreadhorde, reloading his board. Then Duke decided that no one got to use any Planeswalkers as he cast the Immortal Sun to lock everything down. No Planeswalkers, no problem for Mengucci. He beat down with creatures and finished Duke off with Burn from Oath of Kaya. It was again Unmoored Ego that carried Mengucci in the third game, taking all the Kethis out of Duke's deck and leaving him stuck with useless combo pieces in hand before taking over with Command the Dreadhorde to move to 2-0. Mengucci wasn't the only player to decide that control was the way to go this week, and his third round came against Rei Sato, who was piloting Grixis control with all the Nicol Bolas you could ever want. But in a flavor win, even a pair of Bolas couldn't survive the Elder spell, and Mengucci took down the first game on the back of the powerful sorcery. There were plenty more Planeswalkers to come, and to win the second game, Mengucci pulled off something incredible. He won after Chandra, Awakened Inferno, created 3 emblems that would deal him damage every turn. He deftly navigated the red-hot waters with Basilica Bellhaunts and repeated Oath of Kaias, and even burned Vraska's Contempt on Goblin tokens just to stay alive. He eventually turned the corners with his Planeswalkers before the emblems could finish him off. It was a perfect 3-0 start for Mengucci, but Kethis was back, and Huey Jensen would not be denied. Veil of Summer protected his combo pieces in back-to-back games to hand Mengucci his first loss. Mengucci got back on track against Juan Emmanuel de Praz, sweeping his Izzet Phoenix deck in 2 quick games. But he then dropped 2 quick ones to Ben Stark's mono red aggro and his MVP mobilized district just as fast. That meant it all came down to an Esper mirror match against Mike SIGRIST, and Mengucci couldn't have asked for any more from his deck. He took down Kaya to unlock Search for Azcanta to run away with the first game, ending things with a flourish as he used the Elder Spell to eat 2 of his own Planeswalkers to feed an immediate Teferi ultimate. Removal and Planeswalkers had won Mengucci games all week, and it was the hand disruption that finished things off, as Thought Erasures and Basilica Bellhaunts devoured any game plan SIGRIST could come up with in the final tilt, punching Mengucci's ticket to the top 4 after a masterful performance with Esper Control.
So Esper Control it's funny because it's kind of a deck that I hate a lot, but also a deck that I love a lot. Early in the format, I didn't like Esper at all, even last time. And at the end when the format just stabilized, I liked Esper a lot. And now it's the same. Like you kind of see how like the Field of Death deck at the beginning were very popular and right now are kind of out of the format, and that was like very hard matchups. So right now I feel like my choice was very good for the group, but for the top 4, I think I kind of got screwed because kind of everyone metagame. I changed the deck, whereas it just stayed the same. I felt like Esper is like a good deck. Like it's a deck that can have just game against everything, and also changed my deck. I'm not sure if I changed the deck well. I'm not happy because I cut entirely the Kaya's Wrath from my deck. I was playing 2 Kaya's Wrath, 2 Basilica Bellhound, and then I expected Ben to kind of play an aggressive deck, so like mono red strategy. And I expected more sort of like control-ish decks. So I expected Kaya's Wrath to be bad. What happened is that Ben chose a mono blue, which like Kaya's Wrath is actually pretty good because it plays around the +0/+3 dive down, and Ray Sato chose like a mono green stompy deck, and which is like, of course, you want like green against green and red, you want Kaya's Wrath, and REID chose Vampire, so I got really punished by cutting my Kaya's Wrath entirely. Being in this position in the upper bracket, the top 4 of the MPL division, it's obviously like the dream because like when I started this like on Monday, I wanted to be here, so I'm exactly where I want to be. Maybe my deck choice could have been better, but other than that, I'm very happy. Right now, I'm just going to play, just my best, and see how it goes.
All right, so that was Andrea Mengucci. Okay, after watching the round robin play, I can definitely understand why he stayed on Esper Control. It's just without those Kaya's Wraths. Woo, it's going to be a rough week.
It's going from bad to worse here. Mengucci, like things are not looking great for him. I mean, it's Ben actually said it in his video piece. He's like, it's Magic, it's standard, anybody can win a match. And we're not talking about 95-5 here, but like every little data point we've had has been like edge Ben goes to Ben. This one favors Ben, so a little rough for Mengu here.
Yeah, but as you're saying, that percentage-wise is what, 55?
No, it's
45?
more. It's probably more. This is a very bad matchup, right?
I would say it's like in the 60 to 65 range for Ben.
Which for standard is
pretty big.
Yeah, that's big.
That's a big game.
All right, now quick sidebar. Just want to mention later in the day we are going to announce the class of 2019 Hall of Fame inductees.
We are?
Just want to make sure.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you know about that?
I didn't know.
I think you knew. I think you rehearsed that.
Okay.
I think there's
I'm in. I mean, I'm
ceremony
curious.
of sorts here on MPL Weekly going to happen, and I want to make sure that we tease you a little bit and tell you that's coming up. But right now, let's look at Ben's deck that he's brought with this mono blue tempo. All right. So, what are the key cards in this deck?
Curious Obsession is the card that really leads to the most wins. You put this on ideally a 1/1 flyer, a Storm Tamer, Spectral Sailor, Terramander, and you just hit your opponent and draw 2 cards a turn, which lets you leverage all the cards like Wizard's Retort, Lookout's Dispersal, Opt, and Spell Pierce to really prevent them from dealing with whatever got Curious Obsession. If you don't have Curious Obsession, Tempest Gen does a lot of damage. This, 20 basic islands, this thing attacks for 4, 5, 6 points of damage. And then Brine Board Cutthroat also adds a second puncher. if you look at the sideboard, really the sideboard is just trying to add in more counterspells for the matchups where those are good. In fact, it's got almost all counterspells. And then Cerulean Drakes against mono red and an extra Brineborn Cutthroat against control decks with 3 Entrancing Melodies in case you do play against a mid-range style deck.
Okay, let's see Mengucci's Esper control. And so how did he get to that 35% you're talking about?
Well, the biggest difference here is look at Andrea's key card. You know, it's big Teferi, Teferi Hero of Dominaria. It's got Liliana Dreadhorde General. It's got Basilica Bellhunt, Command the Dreadhorde. All these cards cost so much mana. And Ben Stark's gonna sit over there and be like, well, Spell Pierce your 5-drop, Lookout's Dispersal, you know, your 4 or 5-drop. And it's just not gonna go well. Andrea, you know, if we were to get to change key cards for this matchup, it'd be all the cards that cost 2 mana, all the Legion's Ends and Tyrant Scorns.
Absolutely. I like that we've officially gone to calling them Big T and Little T, as we all prefer to do anyway, for the 2 Teferis.
And then post-board, Andrea's just hoping to make things a little bit cheaper with, you know, something like Cry the Carnarium, but really, I'm not looking and seeing any of the cheap removal you really want. Like, sure, Enter the God Eternals would be great if you could resolve that on like a Tempest Gen. Realistically, it's going to get countered by a 1-mana spell.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's used up 4 of his sort of pointed removal slots on these color-specific ones,
Right.
none of which hit blue.
Devout
Noxious
Decrees and
Grasp
Noxious
is not
Grasp,
useful.
exactly.
Right, yeah.
Ooh, and just one of those cries in the sideboard.
Yeah, and even then the window for that is short.
Yeah.
Well,
Looks rough.
yeah, but if anybody can do it, it's Mengucci.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's all percentages here, but we do have the game ready, so let's see what unfolds with Ben Stark and Andrea Mengucci.
All right, Luis, let's get into it. Looks like we are going to be sitting in Mengu's seat here on the bottom part of your screen with this Esper control deck. Well, this looks like a perfectly fine hand.
Yeah, Andrea has already mulliganed. He's going to unsurprisingly put the most expensive card back of Vraska's Contempt. And, it looks like he might be considering something else. No, I mean, Teferi Time Raveler would be the only other card to really consider, because I think you do want to keep Thought Erasure. Though Oath of Kaya is a sorcery speed spell. I don't know, all these cards are good, so this is where mulliganing kind of hurts.
But look at Ben's hand.
Yeah, Ben's on...
He has it all.
An ideal hand, except for the fact that it's got only 1 island. So Ben could end up with a bit of a logjam here, where if he's not able to hit land drops, then he might only be able to deploy 1 spell a turn. On the other hand, if Andrea does something like Thought Erasure, Ben can Spell Pierce it, but that prevents Ben from having a turn 2 Curious Obsession.
Okay, let's see what happens here. Mengucci, yes, he is going to go for the Thought Erasure.
Yeah, he certainly has to. Now Ben can play a Spectral Sailor in response, but then Andrea for sure is going to take that Curious Obsession. Ben's other option is to cast Spell Pierce and delay it by a turn, but give him a chance to set up an obsessed creature, which drawing that second land helps quite a bit in that. So now Andrea is likely going to be priced into playing a Teferi Time Raveler. Ben's going to have to respond to that by playing some Spectral Sailors. It's also, you know, it's really critical that because of decklist, Ben knows he doesn't have to play against Kaya's Wrath, so he has really no reason not to just play everything out.
I've got time.
Teferi now is able to stop Curious Obsession, because at this point Ben could play Curious Obsession and hit for 3, making Teferi unable to bounce, but then he wouldn't draw a card. So Ben's got a kind of a tough decision here, because regardless, he's going to end up being a little bit short, and Siren Stormtamer does help, though, so he's able to protect from 1 thing. Next turn, Andrea is potentially going to be able to run 2 things out there.
And with no real reason, or no real way for Mengucci to catch up from this point, outside of 1-for-1 removal spells, you know, which Ben is sitting on a Stormtamer here. He just has to start slogging through them.
Well, what Andrea's going to have to do is really try to get that Curious Obsession creature off the board here. And this is part of the reason that Siren Stormtamer is such a powerful card, is it actually stops things like Oath of Kaya. So regardless, Andrea's going to have to go for the Oath, know it's going to get countered by Storm Tamer, know that Teferi is going to get hit here so it can't bounce anything, and hope that that one Mortify is good enough. Without a Teferi on the board too, Ben is going to be able to play his counter spells, but of course he just tapped out for a Tempest Gen here, and now Andrea is going to Mortify here, and he's going to have to take out that Spectral Sailor, even though the Tempest Gen hits for more damage.
Trying to stem the bleeding here, though. The bleeding is going to continue in a way, just because the Tempest... Oh, there's that dive down.
Yeah, dive down's critical, because now, even though Ben isn't drawing 2 cards a turn, he's still got Tempest Gen out. He's still hitting for quite a bit of damage, and Andrea's not very close to flipping that Surge for Escanta. Andrea's just forced to keep, look, a 4-mana spell, Vraska's Contempt. Gonna have to go for it on the Tempest Gen. It's just not gonna work.
It's just so awkward, right? And this is the thing that Mono Blue preys on, right? Is the idea that you're gonna spend all this mana to try to kill my creature, and I only have to spend 1 mana to protect it. And I'm also going to pressure your life total as we do so. Easy decision here for Ben. He's gonna fire off the dive down to protect Tempest Gen. Does he find an island?
No, he's got another trickster here. But this still puts Andrea not under a 1-turn clock, but on a 2-turn clock where Andrea's not really getting much done. He's going to be able to take out Brineborn Cutthroat likely here, or it looks like maybe a Spectral Sailor.
I guess he just assumes that Ben will find an island. That's a bit of an assumption, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that I would be a little bit more likely to want to take out the Cutthroat there just because of life total purposes. But either way, that Legion's End's not going to be enough, especially with a Siren Storm Tamer. And look at right here. I mean, even if Andrea had Kaya's Wrath, he would still lose to the end of turn Merfolk Trickster. But here, he's just got there's just nothing that he can really draw that gets him out of this.
He finds Thought Erasure for insult to injury and goes for the concede button. Game number 1 goes to Ben Stark in decisive fashion. That is kind of how Ben drew it up when he submitted this deck, especially hoping to play against Mengucci with this Esper control deck. Now, what can Mengucci do to help shore things up? As we mentioned, a lot of times they have more removal spells out of the sideboard, but the ones that he chose tend to be laser focused on colors that are not blue.
Yeah, he's going to bring in the Duress to break up potential counters. He's going to bring in Legion's End just because it's cheap, or sorry, Cry the Carnarium just because it's cheap, and then Dovin's Veto as another way to answer counters. He just doesn't really have
rough, yeah, really tough. So we're going to take a look at what Mengucci has, but make sure you also look at the top part of your screen for what Ben has, because that is probably more important to how the game plays out, is what Ben starts with versus what Mengucci does.
Well, Ben gets to dictate the pace of the match, because Andrea is going to sit there and be reactive. That's what his deck does. And Ben, if he runs out a bunch of creatures, is going to be prepared to protect them with his various counter magic and Siren Storm Tamers. If Andrea can stick a Teferi, that does turn off a lot of Ben's cards. So a little Teferi plus some counter spells can do the trick.
Okay.
And look at this hand. Turn 2 Thought Erasure with turn 3 Tyrant Scorn on the play. That is exactly where you want to be from Mengucci's side of the table. And looks like Ben did mulligan once here. You can kind of see a card flick back to the bottom of his deck here.
Not uncommon for the mono blue deck to take a mulligan, especially looking for just that right mix of pieces. And we're going to see Thought Erasure here.
Oh no, the mono blue deck never mulligans.
Not in your experience?
And see, here's where Thought Erasure is so powerful, because Andrea can just snap off, like the Curious Obsession if he wants, and then make sure Ben can't land it. He could also take one of the 3-mana spells, which really just signals to Ben that Andrea has an answer for the Spectral Sailor. The biggest downside, though, is if Andrea does this and Ben draws Dive Down or Spell Pierce, then Andrea almost just loses on the spot. And so Ben gets one more draw step to try to draw one of those 1-mana counters.
Boy, this is where the real sweat is, because if he could find a way to protect the Spectral Sailor, no, he didn't. It's a Brineborn Cutthroat, and the shields, they are down. And the thing for Mengu is that he just doesn't have a choice. He probably is sitting there thinking, oh, you probably drew it.
Yeah.
But he just has to run it out anyway, and it actually works. Oath of Kaya kills the Spectral Sailor that had the obsession on it. Of course, the dirty trick about this mono blue deck is that Ben had already gotten that card back. So even though it kind of looks like a 2-for-1, it doesn't actually play out quite that way. It's more like a 1-for-1.
So pretty good discipline from Andrea. He's multiple times scried lands to the top, and I think he just really wants to get to that Teferi and Liliana and start leveraging his more powerful spells here. So now Andrea, you see him set a stop for end of turn because he wants to use Tyrant's Scorn to kill one of Ben's creatures while Ben is tapped out.
Right.
And timing against this mono blue deck is critical. Once again, it looks like Andrea's going for the cheaper utility creature over the Brineborn Cutthroat.
Yeah, he's not really respecting the damage that the Cutthroat comes. Now, he is at 21 life.
In this particular case, I like that because he knows Ben has a Tempest Gen, and Ben was setting up for turn 4 Tempest Gen with Storm Tamer protection.
Right, that makes sense. So here comes Tempest Gen now. Ben, the shields are well and truly down. He's going to lose the island out of hand, but Tempest Gen is on the battlefield here, especially if Ben can find a way to protect it. That said, I am looking at Liliana Dreadhorde General here, and the clock is ticking.
So
Interestingly, Ben not firing off the Opt here.
So I think he really wants to get the counter on Brineborn Cutthroat by waiting on Opt. And the biggest advantage to casting Opt on Ben's turn was if he found Curious Obsession. Now he's going to opt in response to Teferi, look for a counterspell here.
Okay.
And he's getting pretty close. Oh, he found a negate.
Oh, and he found a gate off the top with that Opt.
Oh, yeah, that's big.
And gets the counter, and Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, is going to get countered. Now, there is still one more hope here, though, for Mengucci. If Ben bricks, which he did, Mengucci gets to play Liliana. He can make both players sacrifice 2 creatures, and he'll have a clear board.
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen. It's going to resolve, and now this game is firmly in Andrea's favor.
Wow, really cool stuff, each one upping each other, and Ben just needed something at the end there. Couldn't find it, and now he finds a dive down with no creatures, so just a brick for him. And as you mentioned, Mengucci very much in the lead at this point. Now he's going to start making zombies. He's got Narset coming down to find him more action.
This game's almost unwinnable for Ben because Andrea is just going to be able to peel removal spell after removal spell. He's already got a Legion's End. He's now picked up a Vraska's Contempt, it looks like. He could take Duress. It's going to function as a removal spell as well. And he's just got that Liliana sitting there, so it's not like Ben is really making any headway even against the giant 6-mana Planeswalker.
And look at that, Ben opts and
Opts to concede, as it were?
Yes, he did. So, look at that, post-board game, even though we didn't see any, super great sideboard tech coming in from Mengucci, he found a win.
Well, Ben drew a few too many lands and never got a Curious Obsession going. And the deck can stall out when that happens. Besides Curious Obsession and Opt, it doesn't really have much in the way of card draw, so you can run into a spot where you do end up flooding out a little bit. Note that Ben sided out a land in this matchup.
Interesting. Any reasoning on why you would ever?
I think that this matchup
draw thing is it a matchup thing?
He isn't as punished for missing land drops in this matchup because casting one spell a turn isn't that bad when you're countering a big spell. So, and he really doesn't want to get flooded. I mean, that's how he lost that last game.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine if he had drawn a creature on that last turn rather than a land. Wow. Then Liliana wouldn't have wiped the board.
Solid hands for both players. Dive down, looking to counter that Legion's End most likely. Ben, critically lacking a Curious Obsession that would really kind of push this draw into overdrive.
Yeah, that is the critical card for this.
Every time they don't put Curious Obsession on their creature on turn 2, you just are like, well, you feel like you got away with something.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, this is going to be pretty big. That Terramander, not a wizard, so at this point, that Thought Erasure is going to go unchallenged, which is important because not only is it going to take a card, it also gives you information. And once Andrea knows what's in Ben's hand, it really can help him, sequence his plays a lot better. If only Gitaxian Probe was reprinted, then we could really have some.
Come on, you don't actually want that.
See, because now Ben can take, or Andrea can take the Tempest Gen from Ben and end up in a spot where Ben's not pressuring Andrea at all. Though that Opt is pretty big because if that Opt can find a Curious Obsession. Looks like
Ben's going to keep up Wizard's Retort and Opt as his backup plan.
Interesting. I don't know what would happen. I guess he's really worried about Little Teferi would be the reason not to do that.
Okay. Well, now he knows that it's not going to be Little T, so he's going to fire off Opt, and then he has the option to dive down to protect his Terramander if he'd like.
Yeah. Well, since he found a second dive down, it seems pretty likely he's going to want to protect it here.
Even better.
And Ben still just, not pressuring Andrea at all. All the dive downs in the world.
I wonder how far Terramander is from.
There's 2 spells in the bin now, so.
Okay.
So.
Still needs what, 5 mana?
Yeah, or six mana. So.
Okay. Yeah. So he's away a few lands off here. Still, the fact that Ben has been unable to apply real pressure to Mengucci's life total has made Mengucci's draw look very good. He's got Mortify, Thought Erasure. He's going to make Ben burn a dive down here on his upkeep.
Well, every spell that trades here is good for Ben, though.
Right.
Andrea could almost, like, Andrea's not going to do it, but he could almost get a benefit by just not playing anything, because that way Ben couldn't load up this Terramander.
Yep.
The way things are going, Ben's going to keep trading cards here, and that Terramander is going to end up being able to get pumped. So now Ben, if he wants, can Wizard's Retort here. That put the 4th spell in the graveyard for Terramander, and then Ben very close to being able to level it up with dive down backup.
Will he wait until he can do so?
He's
Would it be reckless to leave the Terramander?
Yeah, I don't think
you know,
I don't think
bare?
Ben I don't think Ben's gonna level up the Terramander without having protection. You know, if Andrea draws a land, Liliana's just going to be such a beating here.
Dive down does nothing
it's
against
gonna
that.
end the game just like before. All right, big draw step for Andrea.
Oh, he hit. Oh, he
It's a
didn't
temple,
hit.
though.
It's a Temple of
See,
Silence.
Okay, so now what this game's going to hinge on is whether Ben can draw a creature or a counterspell next turn.
Yeah.
Because Andrea's going to go for Enter the God Eternals. Ben is gonna dive down to protect the Terramander, and then
he can Terramander up and leave up dive down, and if he doesn't draw a land, excuse me, if he doesn't draw a creature, then Liliana is going to devastate this board.
Ben could also draw a counterspell though. If Ben draws something like Spell Pierce,
True.
that will also end the game.
Let's see what he finds. It's Brineborn Cutthroat. That counts.
So that's not bad because it does give Ben a 3rd creature, but the thing is, Ben's likely going to level up Terramander, leaving just dive down up. Hit Andrea for 6. Liliana's going to wipe the board, and wow, are we going to see Liliana, a 6-mana spell, decide both games here against Mono Blue?
Crazy. Ben is going to have to try to work this Brineborn Cutthroat like a fiddle. He's going to have to put a bunch of counters on it. It just doesn't seem like a reasonable way to win.
Well, there is a way for Ben to win here.
Okay, what do we got?
It's Andrea looking at the graveyard, deciding, is Ben could have Spell Pierce in hand. He can't have the 4th dive down. Andrea's going to play Teferi. It's going to get dive downed. Oh, but he's going to have to dive down in response because Teferi does stop that. So this is actually pretty interesting.
So he can use it to return the other Terramander if he'd like?
Yeah, so Ben at this point is just going to let that happen. Terramander's going to get returned. But then next turn, Ben's going to be able to pump the Terramander again if he wants to. He drew Thought Erasure off the Teferi.
Thought Erasure off the Teferi with the 2 mana.
And now he can see Ben's hand, see that he's got the 4th dive down.
Oh, this is getting interesting.
Oh, this game has gotten a lot more interesting because now Andrea's going to take a creature, because I think he might want to take a creature here so that the Liliana can wipe Ben's board. Because the dive down's not doing a whole lot. It's canceling out that Vraska's Contempt, but Andrea's okay with that.
Especially if Ben has no creatures.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, if you don't need to cast the Contempt, that's even better.
I kind of think if you want to take a creature, taking the cheaper one will serve your purposes better. The one thing though, since Brineborn Cutthroat has Flash, we're kind of assuming here that Ben is going to send his 1 Terramander as a 1/1 over to kill that Teferi. And Andrea wants to keep Ben from being able to leave up a counterspell or play a creature, which what Brineborn Cutthroat does well. Oh, now Ben draws the Spell Pierce.
Wow, Spell Pierce off the top for Ben Stark.
This is incredible. This game it couldn't have been scripted to work out better for Ben. I actually think it was a good play for Andrea to play that Teferi, given the cards he's seen. But, but the way this has worked out is just going to be so bad.
But he did put the Cry of the Carnarium on top of his library there, so he can fire that off and force Ben to use just the dive down to save a Terramander, right?
Well, no, Ben would be able to dive down to save 1, then level up the other Terramander to save the other.
He has enough mana to do it all?
Instead, this is just going to be game Spell Pierce for Liliana.
There it goes.
If I'm Andrea here, I'm just losing my
mind.
Oh,
you just flipped the desk, right? Yeah.
Because now Ben can level up both Terramanders and just send it for lethal.
Unbelievable end here. Ben Stark fires up both Terramanders, and that's 10 damage against an opponent at 9 life, and you even saw Mengucci give him the nice emote, like, dude,
yeah,
that was a good draw.
That's the passive-aggressive, like, yeah,
nice. Was like, yeah, nice. That was the must be nice.
Yeah, so,
a little different.
Congratulations to Ben Stark going to the grand finals of the Ruby Division today. Wow, that was a really interesting game to watch.
We knew he had an advantage, but it played out in such a cool way.
And of course, we're sitting here saying, no, play Liliana, play Liliana.
We have, we're gifted the gift to see both hands.
Yeah.
Andre didn't have that. He made a decision based on the cards he'd seen already.
Yeah.
I think it was a fine decision to play that Teferi. The way it ended up working out was not good for him.
Yeah, one thing that you mentioned very briefly, kind of in the heat of the moment there, that I think you should just expand on a little is he looked into Ben's graveyard, right? And you said, okay, well, he's seen that there's a lot of dive downs and no spell pierces, so he was kind of just running the numbers there, right, about which one's more likely to be in hand for Ben.
Yeah.
And that's like one of those, sometimes you'll see a pro reach over and pick up your opponent's graveyard. Like, what are you looking for? Like, there's no, Ben's not doing anything.
It's just so easy for us to say, or for viewers to say, like, if he just slammed Liliana, he would win. Yeah. But Andre was playing in a way that he wouldn't lose to Spell Pierce or Dive Down by playing that Teferi.
Really smart.
Yeah.
It backfired, of course.
And of course, we can speculate on what Mengucci was thinking, but we do know exactly what Ben was thinking because we have an interview with Paul Chion.
Hello, everybody. I am Paul Chion, joined here by Ben Stark, winner of the upper division semifinals. How's it going, Ben?
Good.
So you kind of shifted gears coming into the top 4 of this event. I mean, you submitted mono red for basically the entirety of last split, and then ran it back again this split and brought it again, and then all of a sudden in the top 4 you swapped. So what was kind of the big reason why you decided to kind of completely change strategies going into the top 4?
I knew I was playing Andrea because we're the 1 and 2 seed. He played Esper and went 5-2 in the split. And Esper can have a pretty good matchup against Mono Red if you make the right adjustments to your list, which he did. He put in a couple of Mortifies. He got out the cards that are anti-Kethis. He cut the Kaya's Wraths because they're really slow and bad against like the Red's little haste creatures. But Blue, the Mono Blue, has an incredible matchup against Esper. Actually, that was like way closer than I would expect on average. And so I was just like, well, I think Andrea is going to choose Esper and just tailor it a little bit to be like kind of a little better against Red than he had in the Swiss, where most people were gunning for Kethis. So I just wanted to play the best matchup I could in the one pairing I knew I'd have. And I didn't really put too much thought into what REID and Ray Saito were going to do, because, I mean, one of them has to beat the other and then get through Andrea if I beat him to even get to play me. So, yeah, I chose Blue just because I thought Andrea would choose Esper, basically.
Okay, so the primary focus in your testing was trying to figure out what Andrea was going to do and tailor a deck to beat him.
Yeah, I mean, not obviously not for the Swiss, but once we knew the top 4 bracket and I know I'm playing him, then, I mean, look, I'm not psychic. If he doesn't bring Esper, he doesn't bring Esper. I just thought, like, that was basically the best matchup I could have against Andrea.
You were talking about how this matchup was, pretty significantly favored for you. But I mean, that match felt pretty close. I mean, even in that last game, I mean, there was a lot of stuff happening back and forth, but there was a point where he used that Thought Erasure to really set up that Liliana to kind of get both of those threats off the battlefield, and you had to find that timely Spell Pierce to actually be able to kind of win that game.
Of course, that's really lucky. It's nothing like a one-outer. I could have top decked I could have top decked any counter in the deck. So you're talking about 2 Spell Pierce, 2 Negate, 3 to 4 Wizard's Retort, and the Pirate counter, whatever I had left. So it was like a 12-outer or something. But that was basically from the point where I had like the 2 Terramanders and the Dive Down. If you had asked me what my chances were to win the game, I would have said like 90%. Because he doesn't have Kaya's Wraths in his list.
Right.
And then when he went to Fairy minus Thought Erasure, I was like, you got to be kidding me,
Yeah, I mean, he ended up making it extremely close because of the sequence of draws. All right, so now that we have Andrea out of the way, you have 3 potential opponents going into the grand finals. Now, of those 3 decks, we have, of course, Ray Sato on his Gruul midrange deck, we have Reed Duke on Urza Vampires, and Andrea Mengucci, of course, on Esper Control. Is there a deck that you would rather not play in the finals?
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 decks I don't want to play, everyone but Andrea. but Reed's deck is by far the worst for me. The reason Mono Blue aggro is not a deck you really see people playing in Standard anymore is because of Vampires. Like White Weenie variants just annihilate this deck, and Vampires is basically just a different White Weenie variant. So that matchup's really, really bad for me. I think the red-green match is much closer, but I would still rather be on Ray's side than mine.
Also, Ray's deck is just kind of wild, right? He's got a lot of interesting card choices in his main deck configuration.
Yeah, he adopted some of my Karn anti-Kethis synergy, it looked like. I saw he put a couple Karns main. I didn't even put the main. I put him in the board for the Kethis deck. But yeah, he's got a cool Gruul Brew. Definitely that deck would have a really good mono red matchup, so I'm pretty glad I didn't run that. But yeah, I think he's still going to be a favorite if he plays against me, but it'll be a close match. And I mean, nobody is going to be a favorite to beat me 2 matches in a row. So of course I like that. But I do believe I'll be under 50% against Ray and REID, and that Andrea is my only good matchup of the 3 decks.
Yeah, well, I mean, it looks like you made a great metagame call, at least against Andrea Mengucci. Best of luck in the grand finals.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, there you have it from Ben Stark with a great win in the upper finals.
Yeah, he said nobody's a favorite to beat me ever, right? That was the quote. That's what I heard him say, yeah.
Ouch.
The big flex from Ben
strong
Stark.
words. Yeah, big flex.
He said something like that.
Typical Ben stuff. Yeah, but that's interesting that was the matchup he wanted, and everything else is a matchup he doesn't want. He didn't expect... He expected to be one of the few creature decks, I guess, is how he metagamed it.
And I mean, on a serious note, what he actually said was, you know, nobody's a favorite to beat him 2 matches in a row, just because, you know, he's the one who has to be beaten twice. So it kind of, he feels like he's going to have an advantage no matter who he ends up facing. But yeah, I mean, Mengucci would be his first choice pretty clearly there.
All right. Well, coming up next, we have the lower semifinals between Reid Duke and Ray Sato. Also, we have a little Hall of Fame induction ceremony for the inductees for 2019.
The
class
announcement.
Of 2019.
Yeah,
the announcement.
Yeah, the induction ceremony will happen at the next Mythic Championship in Richmond.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, you kind of need to know when you're getting inducted. So we're going to announce that later in the day here. Just want to let you guys know, stay tuned for that. And we also have Seth Manfield in the house who's going to be joining us in just a bit. We'll give Luis a little break, and we'll give you a break right now. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. After the short break, we'll come back with more magic.